Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have the Gamma Lab as the hot location. That means it's going to occur in 60% of games, and it has a pretty polarizing effect. Any cards that are in this location on turn 3 will turn into the Hulk, and so you can get a lot of potential value out on the board, but then it comes down to how do you protect it? And so today I'm going to be covering my top decks and techs to try out while it is the hot location. So starting out with my top tech cards today, I think Elektra is going to be a viable choice in a lot of decks. If you have room for a low one-cost card, I think Elektra is going to be great at helping you clear some of your opponent's cards from that location and retaining the upside by yourself. A card like Mr. Sinister is going to be great because that will put 2 copies onto the board. You don't typically want to fully invest in that lane because then you're very susceptible to counterplay, but a 2-card, 2-cost combo allows you to very easily push that, and you're not draining your resources too much to be able to get 2 Hulks out of the location. You could do the same thing for Brood, but I think that's a little bit of overkill. I wouldn't necessarily add this into any lists that you're not already running it in, but if you have it, it might help you in a few games. I think Electro is going to be phenomenal for today. Electro is going to be able to be played on 3, and then you are going to turn that card into the Hulk, and so you're no longer going to have your negative downside. And so you get the extra energy, be able to use it for the majority of your games, and not have to worry about the downside or negative effects of Electro. I think Juggernaut's going to be a pretty fun choice. You're going to be able to push the opponent's cards out of that location, and then they're not going to be able to turn those resources into Hulks, and so you'll be able to get more upside out of the location than they do. And it really depends on how heavily your opponents and players are leaning into the Gamma Lab location, but I think Juggernaut should give you that kind of edge over your opponent here. A Cosmo is going to be a good way to protect your cards from being Shang-Chi'd. If you run this or Armor, then your opponent's no longer going to be able to do a Shang-Chi. You can then lean in with like an Iron Man to really double down on your power level, and it protects that lane in the process. Armor is going to be phenomenal. You're going to need a way to protect your Hulks after they turn into the Hulks, because they are going to be very susceptible to Shang-Chi. I think Shang-Chi is going to run rampant today, and so Armor is going to be a great option to protect your cards if you invest moderately into the location. And then I've mentioned it a couple times, but Shang-Chi is going to be amazing for today. He's going to be able to clear the opponent's Hulk, and yours will stay there. So depending on if your opponent has a way to clear yours, or sometimes that may just force them into a retreat if they don't have a way to protect it or deal with yours as well. Patriot, he's not necessarily meant to be played directly into Gamma Lab, but Patriot is going to increase the power of your Hulks. And so if it is for some reason maxed out at 4, I don't recommend ever putting 4 cards into the Gamma Lab because then you're very susceptible to counterplays. But if for some reason it is, then your Hulks will be more powerful than theirs will because they are vanilla cards once they transform. And so I think Patriot lists are going to be in a pretty good place for today for the most part. And then the next tech that I have is a Quake. Now, I'm not featuring this in any of my lists today, just because it's rather inconsistent. You can't control where that location is going to go. But I think whenever this works, it will work very well today. You'll be able to yank the Gamma Lab out from under your opponent, shift it into another lane, but it is a little bit inconsistent because you don't know where that location is going to go. You won't be able to tell which direction it will go in, so you can't pre-stack your cards over there unless you just drop several resources into both of the other lanes. But I don't know that this one will be good in every game. There will be some where it's really, really funny to see, and so I would look out for the Quake interaction for today. And then another card that you might have to look out for today is a Valkyrie. Valkyrie will set the power of all the cards in that lane to 3, but if they are running this in combination with a Luke Cage, it will actually take away the set 3 power from Valkyrie and bring those Hulks back up to 12. And so if it looks like they are setting up a potential Valkyrie into Luke Cage play, be very, very wary that they will be able to restore their power levels and they could have a really big boost over you. I think it's a little bit clunky to use. I don't have a great list for it, but it is a tech card that you should be aware of going into today. So starting off, we have a Series 2 build. If you are in Series 2 or maybe just barely past it, a Kazar Zoo build should be very, very strong, but this one doesn't lean all the way in to the Kazar Zoo style build. It has a couple of counterplays. You can stack a few of your one-cost cards into the Gamma Lab. The rest you want to play away from that location. If you draw into Mr. Sinister, that's going to be great at getting you 24 power out of the Gamma Lab location, and then you can either choose to protect it with an armor, or you can lean in and destroy their cards with a Shang-Chi. If the opponent's not running one or they don't have one, then all of a sudden you can kill their cards and you get a lot of upside as a result. The second list that I have, and one that should be pretty good for today, is a Gamma Lab Patriot deck. Now, in this one, I did take out the high roll of the Onslaught for a little bit more consistency in counterplay in a Debris. If you want to, you can take out Debris, add back in the Onslaught. In this version of the list, it varies from some of the typical Patriot lists, and this one does lean away from Ultron. Ultron's more of a backup plan. If your Hulks end up getting Shang-Chi'd, then you can do an Ultron as a last resort, but this list doesn't rely very heavily on him because you're going to be able to build up your lanes with the Brood, the Mr. Sinister, those will turn into Hulk, and then you can start pushing some of your lower cost cards into those other locations. And so depending on how this plays out, you may adjust this list. You may not need the full push of Squirrel Girl. You may not need the Ultron. If so, you can invest in some more base power. So you can add in the ignored Cyclops card, maybe Abomination. You just have some wiggle around room in like a standard Patriot list. But just the archetype in general should be very, very strong today. And I wanted to include both Mr. Sinister and Brood as a way to easily fill up the Gamma Lab location without having to spend too many turns on pushing there. Way we can focus on Patriot into one of the other lanes. This list does run ZombieLemon as a way to protect your Patriot. Knowing that the Patriot list is going to be so strong today, I think Enchantress is going to run rampant. And so an ZombieLemon is going to be a way to protect your Patriot from that counterplay. The next list that I have is an Electro Ramp deck. This deck runs Hood and no destruction means to destroy it because we should be seeing Gamma Lab in almost every single game, in 60% of games, so it's going to occur quite often. So the Hood should be easy to be taken care of. You can always still ramp with your Electro, even if it doesn't show up. That'll allow you to do a turn 4 Hobgoblin or Doc Ock into a turn 5 Leader, Magneto, Odin, or you could take one of these cards out and add back in Dr. Doom. But with the Gamma Lab location, I figured there's not going to be a lot of extra free space, and so we don't necessarily need the go wide factor that an Electro Ramp deck typically runs. And so you could also replace Hobgoblin with a Leech, but I can't bring myself to do that. I can't bring myself to add it into my lists. And so this one should work pretty well today because you will be able to get rid of the downside from your Electro. And the last list I have is a Count Me Out deck. It is a counter heavy deck. This list wants to push early power, so you could use your Sentinel into the Gamma Lab a couple times. You could throw your Mysterio out onto the board. And then once that transforms into Hulk, you're not looking to angle yours so much as you are angling to destroy your opponents. And so if you're finding that you're not running into any ongoing cards and you do have Absorbing Man, take out Enchantress, add in Absorbing Man. That way, if you have the perfect hand, you could do Sarah into Shang-Chi and Absorbing Man on that final turn to destroy 2 lanes and give yourself some increased upside. But I think that's going to be very, very situational. I think this base list should serve very, very well today, especially with Patriot decks, to my suspicion, being very, very strong. I would expect a counter-heavy Enchantress and Shang-Chi style deck to do very well while this location is hot. But those are my top deck recommendations to try out while the location is hot. If you are running into anything else and any of these decks work well for you or they don't work well for you, let me know in the comment section down below. I love hearing that feedback so that I can better brew for the next time around. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.